This is the unfiltered truth about entrepreneurship. Raw, no BS, no sugarcoating. Welcome to Entrepreneur Intel. I'm your host, Wes Matthews. Each episode, we'll learn from experienced founders and uncover the top 5% learnings that led to their success in all things personal, family, and business. This show is sponsored by Stealth Consulting, delivering clear marketing strategies, ROI, and no surprises. I'm super excited for today's guest. He is a visionary in the CFO field. Really excited to dive into that. He helps e-com store owners get financial clarity and increase profit margins by 50%. He has scaled Shopify stores from $1 million to over 37 million. Principal at Profit Surge Group and fractional CFO at e-commerce profit group, Charles Leikauf. Welcome.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you because what really sticks out with your intro, super solid stuff, but a visionary in the CFO field. I run into so many entrepreneurs and visionary entrepreneurs who, quite frankly, don't really know numbers. So it's kind of refreshing that, we're going to have a conversation today and you can help us out. But I have to ask you first. I ask everybody that's a guest on the podcast. So you went full fractional about 7 years ago. Well, actually in 21, but you've been in this space for a little over 7 years. What's the most important lesson you've learned thus far?
Oh, gosh. The most important lesson I've learned so far. Well, first of all, I learned the lesson that I could be here, right? I didn't know what fractional CFO was. I didn't know it was like a real thing. 2017, I had a corporate job, was doing really well for myself. I worked for a large company called Siemens. And my wife found this lady in a Facebook group. And she was like, oh, well, this lady says she needs financial help. I know you've been reading all these entrepreneurship books and you want to work for yourself. Like, what do you do? Right? Like, you should message her. Maybe you can help her. And I was like, it's not worth my time. Small businesses don't make any money. Like all the like common excuses. And so I didn't message the lady. And the next day comes, I get home from work and she's like, Charles, did you message the lady in the Facebook group? She said she needs help with finance stuff. And I was like, no, like I don't like company that I work at. Numbers start with a B in billions, not like small business, like just super arrogant. Third day, she's like, hey, did you message the lady? I was like, fine, whatever, I'll do it. So I get the lady on the phone and she owned an ad agency. Her finances were all messed up. Didn't know how profitable she was per each client, giving away free work, all the stuff. And in order to tell my wife, like, hey, this isn't worth my time, I told her a price that I thought would be insane. And surprisingly, I was like, yeah, it'll be $7,500 a month. Then it's going to take me like 4 or 5 hours a month, maybe for 3 months. And I'll just pay it today. And the lady goes, okay. My first thought was, oh my, okay. All right. I should have said a hell of a lot more. My second thought was, I don't even have a way to take this lady's payment. So the biggest lesson first is if your wife tells you to do something, just do it. The second lesson is that there are a bunch of companies out there that need a lot of help that are not doing 500 million a year, but maybe they can't afford a full-time CFO. So the biggest lesson that I've learned is A, listen to your wife. B, there's so many more people out there that you can help that you have no idea about. And so that's how I got here by accident.
That's awesome. I love that you have just corporate experience and your numbers start with a B, and then you kind of had this vision of entrepreneurs what am I going to do meddling in this space, right? It doesn't make any sense. What drew you to that? I mean, obviously you had that first experience, but that's a big shift, right? You're talking Siemens, big company, big money, to, let's call her Sally Sue entrepreneur, right? Like how do you make that transition, or how do you make that mind shift change?
So the mindset shift was really interesting, right? When I first made the shift, my biggest thought was thumbing my nose at it, which is like, this isn't worth my time, right? One of the things I realized is small companies have really big problems and it's impacting the owner directly. It's not like faceless shareholders. It's not like, some dude in the corporate office in another country. It's, real people, and they're willing to pay real money to get their problems fixed. And so, if I take a e-commerce company from, 1 million to 5 million over a couple of years, 10% margins on 1 million, maybe take home 100 grand a year. 10% margins on 5 million or 20% margins on 5 million, you've effectively changed your life. Now they can send their kids to school. They can buy the fancy car. They can go on vacations. They can make a real impact on their life. Whereas if you save shareholders $20 million a year, okay, and who are the shareholders? You're never going to meet them, right? Even you might be one of the, 50 million shareholders there. So like the real life impact has been like the coolest thing for me.
So it's interesting, like, why I mean, was it just because she happened to be in e-commerce, you kind of just latched on to because e-commerce to me, like, there's, professional services, there's, B2B, and then there's, like, e-commerce as in its own special class. Like, how did you wind up in e-commerce?
Oh gosh. So I had like an e-commerce store before when I was younger. Like I tried the whole like drop shipping thing, when I was a lot younger and in school. Didn't turn out well, by the way. Um and so I really liked the space and it was exciting. And I talked to her. She owned an ad agency and she had like 30 e-commerce stores underneath her, and they all needed financial help and they all had the ability to pay. And so it just kind of made sense, right? Because after I did the optimizing for the agency, she was like, "All my clients need help. Can I hire you to just work on clients one by one so they can afford to spend more money on ads?" And so kind of got here by accident. I don't know why I didn't go into manufacturing because that was my background, or financial services. But e-commerce is just it's just fun. Like if you change two or three small levers, you can triple the size of your business like overnight. And that's something that's really cool.
Well, what's interesting is, like, so that one interaction you had with that one woman in that ad agency, you're effectively able to help her, but then all of her client roster you're able to get into and help. So, like, that one conversation, I think it goes back to, like, as an entrepreneur, somebody asked me for advice and I said, just take a half-hour call with anybody. You never know where that opportunity is gonna go, and for you, you found, like a gold mine, so to speak, with that one one agency.
I
So
mean, I think about it like this, having you're so right about, like, having that one conversation. I have a bunch of intro calls with people networking, like, I'll take anything, but that one call in 2017 has changed my life completely. So for the next, what is that, for 7, 8 years, my life is completely different now because of one 30-minute phone call from one strange lady in a Facebook group who I thought was gonna be a waste of my time. So, grateful for her.
does your wife remind you of that very often?
No, no, no. I've kind of internalized that one where she's like, "Charles, I think this is a really good idea. You should do that." I usually go, "Think it's I don't yes, sure." And, she's right more often than she's wrong. So
No, that's awesome. So on the e-commerce side, like, you kinda bring up something that I think a lot of people experience or have thought of, "I want an e-commerce store, or I can sell stuff online." How do you look at the world of e-commerce, like, from a financial perspective? I mean, what's a good opportunity? You have some big gorillas in the room, which is Amazon, technology shifting so quickly. Like, what does that opportunity look like getting in the e-commerce space right now from your perspective?
So e-commerce like 2017, 18, 19, and before, like it was the world of free money, right? You could spin up like a really crappy ad, like as you know, CPMs were basically free compared to how they are now, pre iOS 14, and you could put something out there, and if it hit you, you had instant overnight success. Now things are a little bit harder. You have to be a little bit better of an operator. Your ad cost is a lot higher. You got to have like a much sexier offer. It has to be a better product fit. It's a lot more competitive. And so when I look at the space and the opportunity now, um, if you want to be lazy and just put up a couple ads, like unless you get lucky and hit a banger of a product, good luck. You're probably not going to be there. But if you're willing to sit down and put in the effort and get behind the data and be a really good operator, you're going to be able to grow a lot better than a lot of people. And so now it's not just how good you are at ads, but how good you are at being an operator, how good you are at managing your cash flow. A lot of e-commerce businesses run negative day one, right? Like they lose money on the first purchase. And so that's the game you got to play. Just the level is a lot higher, but there's still plenty of opportunity for people there who operate at that level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so, like, if you think about, like, I look at a phone, right? I have a 15-year-old. I have many kids, but the one that's 15 is, I call it his Snapchat and TikTok device. Like, he doesn't talk to anybody, he doesn't search anything, he doesn't go to websites. Pretty much every buying decision, the input's coming from TikTok. Like, what do you see today in 2024 and into the future of, if you're an e-commerce store? Because what do you do? Like, how what platform do you go? I mean, the magic question is, where do I invest? What do I do? But from your experience on the CFO side, where do you see everybody sort of shifting to?
I mean, TikTok's like the newer big thing. TikTok Shop is, pretty powerful. Facebook's still trying to get like their store, like it's rolling, but it's not nearly as powerful as like the TikTok Shop kind of method. Influencers aren't as like juiced as they used to be, right? Like you have to be a little more careful. It's really interesting. Something that I'm seeing a lot of people do is they're adding a lot of digital products to their e-commerce offers. So like good example here is there's a company that makes like a kind of like a coffee replacement, like pre-workout like thing. So it's got some vitamins in it, but it's not as much caffeine as pre-workout. It's like a good morning orange powder that's like, imagine like if Sunny D pre-workout and coffee had a baby and like that's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound very good, but they sell a couple $1 million a month of them. And they have, when you buy it, you get a shaker, you get a meditation guide PDF, you get a superfood guide, you have the ultimate morning routine guide. And so they have like 7 digital products plus a shaker plus a travel bag plus a little scoop plus some stickers. And so you're no longer buying just like the pre-workout good morning nutrition powder. And so when I see those, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Google or even display or whatever it is, um, having like a really powerful juiced offer that like makes it different than anybody else, that's like the biggest thing. It depends on who you're going after, is what platform. If you want like an impulse purchase to like a 22-year-old, yeah, TikTok is going to be the spot. If you're selling to 65-year-old women, 65-year-old men, I mean, you're probably going to be biggest on Facebook, you know?
I had a conversation the other day with a guy. He had a concept, like a new concept for like a consumer good product. And as he's
Mhm.
talking, like I'm like, I can't really advise or consult in this space, but I'm like thinking about what he's talking about, and I'm like, man, you're talking about getting a shampoo or conditioner on a shelf in a unique bottle, but now you got to sell direct to like Walmart, all the big box stores. Like I thought about that and like startup, and it just kind of made my head explode in terms of how difficult it would actually be to spin up like an e-commerce product. I mean, how you mentioned about like being negative on the first sale. What does it really look like for an entrepreneur to have like one of those drink products? Like how much capital, how much are they looking at investing? Because I think people have these ideas, but some are delusional in the sense of how much money and how much time this is actually going to cost.
Oh gosh. So like there's a million different factors that play into that, right? It's, are we trying to sell it on retail? Okay, well then we need to make sure there's demonstrated volume. We can get into retail. There's, agents or companies or placement people that you can pay to get in there. What does that look like? What are the payment terms? Usually they're, going to pay you either after it sells or 90 days later, 60 days later, whatever. And so, like, when we think of just like startup costs, like, you got to be able to make the thing. It's got to be something that people want. So you have to test it and it has to work. You got to pay for packaging. Like, if you're, looking to go really hard and go into full on retail plus e commerce, like, yeah, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. Right. But if you're just looking to get started and do something cheap, like, you can just sell online and you can just do something organic. So you don't have to run money on paid ads, because what if people don't want what you made? Right? Like even as an agency owner, right? Like, if people don't want it, you can't sell it. And so depends upon how big you want to start. Like I've started a skincare company, and you spend 20, $30,000 on a couple runs of products in the beginning. Cool. You got to pay that. You got to get the website built. Like, it's hard to get into anything unless you want to go the straight drop shipping model, or do it really slow. But when you do that, everything's always proven, because you're not going to go down plunk $30,000 on inventory down for something that people don't want. You've already proved it out organic. So it's always interesting to start a little bit slower and with organic and with a product that people want, instead of just going full balls to the wall. Hey, I'm going to try and be in Target. I'm going to make a unique bottle that costs more with a unique product. Like, that's great. What if nobody wants it and Target doesn't sell any of it? And they go, okay, like, you got to buy all these back from us. That sucks.
Yeah, my first emotion was, man, I'm like, can't you just hook up with a company that's already on the shelf and just sell them your bottle? Because there's
Yeah.
the bottle, but you have to create the material inside that everybody needs to love. I mean, to me, so talking about that, like you have some experience around really scaling e-commerce businesses. One example, like a million to over 37 million. Like, explain a little bit about that. I mean, did they just have like a gem of a product and just really didn't know how to get it to the next level? Or talk a little bit about that.
I mean, so there's a couple different combinations, right? So that was a skincare business. It did really well, really high margins. It was profitable day one, not, day 90 in the customer kind of relationship journey. One of the things that was really powerful is um, I came from the world of manufacturing with like razor thin margins. You got to be really capital conscious. You got to allocate like every little dollar. Whereas if you have massive margins with skincare and it's growing, but you apply that same financial discipline, you're going to be able to grow. So you couple that with really good customer lifecycle marketing, like our average purchase, someone bought again within 7 days of their first purchase.
Wow.
Like they were literally getting the product for a day. Like you're getting a repeat purchase within 7 days. And so what we were able to do is we would run $5 positive on the front end. 7 days later, we're getting another purchase. And then maybe 35 or 45 days later after that, sometimes 60, we were getting another purchase. So it's having a really good product life cycle and then a really high AOV. Our AOV was just north of the average fractional or the average skincare company's AOV. So we were able to outbid everyone in the auctions and spend over $1 million a month on ads.
Wow.
And so that's how you can go to scale, because it's, our only thing is how do we hire more people? How do we get enough supplies? How do we manage cash? And so operating was way more important after marketing was figured out, right? Operating slowed us down more than marketing did.
What do you see come? So like that's skincare, like, right now,
Mm-hmm.
2024 AI, there's a lot going on in the ad world and just the product world. Like, what do you see as like the next 3 to 5 emerging markets when it comes to e-commerce from your perspective?
I don't know about emerging markets. Like there's a couple different things. Like the new mother slash baby niche is very, very, very profitable, and companies want those lists, right? Because they have an idea. There's a cohort of women and children who they can sell something to every year for a new problem or phase. Like I don't have kids, but you do. But there's certain things every person who has a new child versus a child that's 6 months, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 years. Like there's different products for each phase of the life cycle, and so companies are buying up, baby brands for that list because they know that they have a game plan of stuff they can sell to the mothers for the next 5 years. So people are thinking like deeper in as far as like life cycles go for products or users. So that's like one of the first things. The next thing is something that I've seen recently is when you look at the e-commerce world, when people are buying something, they're usually buying to fix some sort of problem, right? So like if I buy protein powder, it's because I need to eat 2.5, 3 pounds of chicken a day, or just throw some scoops in there and we're
Yeah.
good. And so if we think about it, um, I'm trying to solve a fitness or health problem if I buy protein powder. If I buy like a appetite suppressant pill or diuretic or something in the fitness world, right? Right now, what I'm seeing is people are selling that, but then on the back end, like if you have all these high ticket coaching offers, is how do you combine the two? So hey, maybe I get you to buy my protein powder, or I get you to buy my creatine or whatever else. But then I go, hey, by the way, you have a free call with one of our health advisors to like use your product better. And that turns into a sales call where you can sell them on a $3,000 or $5,000 coaching plan online. And so I'm seeing a lot of like connecting those two fields that are usually completely different. And that way you're turning a $50 supplement purchase that you may or maybe profitable or slightly negative on into a $3,000 back end. And so that's another thing that I'm seeing is combining front end problem with back end solution at completely different price points. So those are the two things that I'm seeing that are fairly unique and novel. From like a like solution, like how to grow kind of way.
Is Shopify still the king? Like if somebody's got an idea or they want to
Yeah.
use a platform, Shopify is king.
I'll put it like this way. I have zero clients not on Shopify.
No, it's good to know. So I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, right? That they might have a service business or some type of business that they want to put it online, right? And from your perspective or recommendation, how do you, as an entrepreneur, like how do you wrap your mind around that? Like, what would be some of the first steps you would take to take an old fashioned brick and mortar company and go online? Are there any like books, any resources? How would you even get started?
So if I knew nothing, right? Say I had a brick and mortar store and I knew nothing about selling online. The first thing I would do is I would make a Shopify account, put my stuff on there, and I would get my socials done, right? Make sure that you have a Facebook page, make sure you have an Instagram, TikTok. I would make sure you have those, and I would do really like light kind of Google ads. Now, if you're looking for resources, Shopify's website has a ton, right? I remember when I first started, made my first e-com store in 2013, 2014. All the resources on Shopify was helpful. Now you have a million different places. You have like e-commerce coaches and whatnot, but believe it or not, there's so much gold on YouTube. There's so much gold on YouTube. And if you're just getting started, you just need a weekend, two monitors, get YouTube on this screen and get your Shopify on this screen and just plug it away. And everyone has a slightly different path, but I would get on all the socials. I would start rolling some like Google ads, and I would, just use YouTube as your thing to build Shopify.
Now, like as a professional service company, like say you're a roofing company or like, in the
Mm-hmm.
home services, they're like, well, we sell roofs, but like, is there anything they could do, like sell swag or do something just to have a store, just to get that exposure that would help them ultimately? Because what if you have those businesses are like, I really don't have anything to sell, but is that a good channel for them to market and show up?
I'm a big believer if you're doing something that's working, just do more of it. So like if you're gonna do all that, like yeah, maybe you can sell some swag or some hats or some jackets or whatever else. Honestly, I would just hire another salesperson, spend more money on ads,
Yeah.
like for your roofing company. Like go sell another $40,000 roof. Like don't worry about a couple $100 a month from jackets, unless it's like for a fun project. But if you got something that's working, I'm a big thing of just like put on the blinders and just do way more of it.
So Google on the home service side is like there's LSA, local service ads now. I mean, Google predominantly was like Google search, Google paid, right? Now they've
Hmm.
shifted to this LSA model, which is local service ads. Now it's like a pay per lead model. If a business gets a lead that's not a good lead, you can actually dispute it. You don't pay for it. Like they're really evolving into like what's important today. Do you see anything like that on the e-com side, like with spam and AI and all these things that are coming down the pipeline?
So Google's trying to cut out people to use the Google platform. They're trying to make it self-serve. It's not gonna be like that anytime soon. Especially because if you listen to a Google rep, you're gonna lose money. Um, for e-commerce, when I'm thinking about it, right? There's a couple different like ways to go about it to like make things simpler. Um, it's kind of hard. There's people who will do like CPA offers, right? Which is like, hey, I'll run your ads, I'll spend all the ad spend, I'll do all this. I want $50 per new purchase that I get for you. Now, if the agency gets it for $10 or $55, like that's on them. That's something, but usually get people to sign up for that. Like you got to have a big proven store, and it has to be going well. For anything that makes things like a lot easier, a lot more revolutionary, I think TikTok Shop is the thing, right? Like you can get out there, you can get things pushed to creators. They'll make it. They get a commission percentage. So I think maybe like recruiting creators and kind of push into that. That's going to be your closest way to like recreate like the LSA kind of model.
Now, what about Snapchat? Anything there from an e-com perspective?
I have clients who run retargeting on Snapchat, and like nobody they know is spending real money. What I mean by real, I mean like over $100,000 a month. I know for certain people that real is $1,000, real is $1 million a month. That's like my like kind of threshold. I have people who are spending money on retargeting, and the stats in platform show like it's getting a 19x ROAS, and then when you pull it up in triple whale, it's not doing so hot. So I haven't seen anything big on Snapchat. That doesn't mean there's not opportunity there, but most people use it as like a retargeting platform from what I've seen.
Yeah, you mentioned briefly, like, what is that dashboard, right? Like, if you have all of these platforms providing ads, like, where are all these rolling into? What do you recommend to, like, sort through the data?
So that's challenging because when you look at whether you have your Facebook ad manager or Google ads or whatever else, like there's things that you can use, whether it's High Roast or Triple Whale or Wicked Reports or um, any other kind of services. The thing is each platform is going to lie to you. Facebook's going to say, I got all the credit for all the ads, spend more with me. And then Google's going to say, no, I got all the credit for all the ads, spend more with me. Snapchat, same thing. And so when you look at it, it's really hard to tell. Like attribution is, I'm sure as you know, is a nightmare. Triple whale is helpful. But again, it's not also, as accurate as we would like to be. You can build out and like track all the UTMs yourself for everything. Um, when we're looking at like do we increase or decrease ad spend, I like to think of it just as a marketing efficiency ratio, right? Like if you want to be super nerdy about it, keep ad spend flat on all platforms and then just double it on one and see if your efficiency changes, right? Those are options, but attribution in itself is a massive guessing game. And if anyone who's told you they've figured it out, it's marketing BS, right? Like I love Hyros, I use it. It's not accurate, and that's fine.
So as a fractional CFO, I mean, how do you walk into a company? Because I mean, what you're talking about touches more than just CFO duties, right? So it sounds like there's a lot of crossover with marketing, or either like a close relationship with marketing operations. Like, what's the first thing that you do, right? I mean, companies coming to you, hey, we need help. Like, how do you even start your process?
Well, the first thing I do is we look at your numbers, right? Most of the time, their accounting's not done well. Maybe they don't have bookkeeping at all. Maybe they don't have that done. So the first thing is like we look at your numbers. Usually their numbers are wrong, terrible, right? Whether we do it in house or we recommend someone to do it, we get your books kind of cleaned up. That's the first thing. Because if you come in and you hire us and hey, we're really expensive, we get you a good result, and I go, all the data you're giving me is wrong. I'm a really good guesser, but that only takes us so far, right? I can get you, 50% of the way there by guessing. Like I don't need to know, your exact accounting and financials to know you're spending too much on marketing or too little on marketing. Those you can kind of go, all right, you know, make a couple changes. We're in the right direction, but to get true precision on like what happened and what is going to happen, we need accurate financials. So that's number one. Number two is like the very next thing is we go, okay, what are our goals? Where do we want to be? Right. If our goal is to go from 5 million to, 10 million and with a 5% margin to a 12% margin, there's a lot of things that have to happen. Right. We're gonna have to spend way more on ads, probably. We're gonna have to have a much better lifetime value. We're gonna have different cash flow management. We're gonna have to have probably a cheaper cost of goods sold. And so we have an entire playbook that we run through, right? Like, so one week we will work on cutting costs, renegotiate with vendors. The next week is getting different payment terms, getting different lines of credit that are more affordable, looking at like, hey, can you actually spend more on marketing? How do we do that? What does it look like? And so there's a massive like playbook of like solutions for each section of your financials, whether it's cost, revenue, marketing, etc. And we just go line by line and institute like a playbook for each section.
I know this isn't a one size fits all question, but like, what can a business typically look at, from a marketing spend perspective or like a lead acquisition cost? Like, how high is that relative to that widget when it comes to e-commerce?
I mean, truthfully, you should spend as much as you possibly can, right? Like if I had a box, it's a little black box, and I could feed $1 into it and it popped out $4, you better believe I'm taking out a second mortgage and I'm putting every dollar I can into that box. Um, when you're looking at that, I like to think about it is what's the least efficient I can possibly be and still make money. And so when I come on, I usually there's like a marketing team that's already there, and I go, okay, marketing team, you can spend as much money as you want up until this marketing efficiency ratio. So it goes balls to the walls, provided we have inventory and cash flow for all of that. We're assuming those things are solved, right? And so if I say, hey, marketing team, go out and go get me a 2.4 MER, right? Spend as much money as you can. That makes your job a hell of a lot easier. Cool, just go spend. And so that's the first thing I like to do is figure out whatever number that is, and then just let them go, provided like we have the back end infrastructure and inventory to manage that.
And what do you feel like for like an e-com company? What do they need on that marketing side to make that happen, right? Because we just talked a little bit about all of these ad platforms are going to lie to you, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
make decisions based on good data. And as a CFO, you need accurate data. So, like, who's kind of leading that charge on the side of the e-com to make sure that that happens?
So it really depends, right? If you're a good marketing firm, you're looking at like what is your cost to acquire a customer, right? Not cost to acquire a purchase. Those are very different things. And because attribution is a mess, I just look at total spend by total new customers. So call it CAC, call it NC, CPA, like whatever vernacular you so choose. That to me is usually the most important thing in judging that. So if I know I sell something for $100, the product cost me 20, right? Realistically, you can probably spend, up to $70, up to $60 to acquire a new customer based upon LTV and whatever else. And, whenever the second purchase comes. So it's, how do we get there? Right? What does that look like? And if you're at underneath that, spend as much as you can.
Sounds amazing, but it also sounds a little scary, right? So how do you help the entrepreneur walk that tightrope, right? Because I'm assuming that they're probably cash strapped. There's a lot on the line. They're like, this has to work. Because if this doesn't work, we're screwed or we're tapped out or the money well's going to dry up. How do you calm them down?
I've had times where agencies have called me in and they're just like, Charles, my client is terrified to spend money on ads. They're getting like, here's an example. This was in the baby niche. We had a client who was getting like a 4.7x ROIs on ad spend, and they were break even at like 2.2. So there's a massive margin there. And I built a financial model to show them you have the money, you have the inventory runway, we have the credit if need be. You can quadruple your spend as long as it doesn't get below this total ROAS number. You will make more money. So do you want 40% of 100K a month, or do you want 10%, of a hell of a lot bigger number, right? Which one works? Because at the end of the day, I want to optimize for like net income or like total benefit to the owner. Revenues, whatever. And so I just think, what do I need to do to increase how much the owner is going to make at the end of the day? If I can show you in the financials of what happens, then it's no longer like an emotional kind of decision. It's just like, okay, well, the numbers make sense. Let's do it. And like that's the cool thing about ad spend is I don't have to commit to spending $50,000 a day tomorrow. And if I do, I can turn it off in one day if it doesn't work. Granted, it's a pain in the ass to do so, but like
So how do you write like you're a smart guy, client grabs you, but you're like, hey, I'm fractional. Like you're not 100% with that one company, right? How do you overcome that when somebody's betting a lot of money, they're like, hey, okay, we're going to go down this direction, but you're like, hey, I'm fractional, you know? How do you overcome that when they're like, no, 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 come full time, like be all in on our project?
I mean, you probably can't afford me full time. Number one, I tell them straight up, like you probably can't. Um, Two, probably couldn't afford someone as good as me full time, so just take me part time. Three, you have to have a really good sales process, right? Like in the sales process, like any sort of on alignment of expectations in the sales process is going to show up in your relationship with the customer. So if they're ultra clear on like this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're involved in, this is what you're going to get on the sales call, and then on their onboarding call, everything's reiterated and we align with goals. You can't come to me a month later and be like, "Hey, I want this." It's like we've been on the same page since. That's them deviating it. And so when I see people who are other fractionals get in trouble with scope creep, it's because they didn't have like a very dialed in sales process, right? I usually don't have people who want more than we're giving them. And that's because our deliverables are really good and our results are good. So sales process deliverables.
Now you bring up a good point now, and like, where do you see or where does the e-commerce world live with salespeople or having digital websites do the selling for you versus actual people? I mean, do you see that shifting from 2017 where you started of people now of just technology finishing the sale?
There are a couple brands we've worked with who they sell like more expensive goods, like in the $1,000 to $4,000 range. And a couple of them have added on salespeople to call the abandoned carts. And that has been really powerful for them. You know, to do at scale, like it's hard to find people that are like really good. But usually, like, hey, I saw you were looking at this. What are you specifically looking for? Like one was they sold like massage tables, right? And like tables for chiropractors. And so those can get kind of pricey. And so people who would opt in or do on the email lists or who are looking at certain products, they would call. And I think these people added an extra $150,000 a month to their business just by having someone who call for those higher ticket things. And so when you're willing to do that, you're going to learn a heck of a lot more about your customers. Your ads are going to get better. Like, when was the last time an e-commerce store got on the phone with their customers and was like, "Hey, why did you buy this?" Or like, "Why didn't you buy this?" Right? Like your ads are going to get a lot better, but B, If you're selling something really expensive, like you can get a salesperson in there, just call them, be like, hey, I saw you looking at this thing. Why didn't we get it? Were we looking at something else? Were you looking at like something that would be more helpful? So I've seen that with higher ticket things. With lower ticket things, it's about interviewing your customers. If you just pulled 10 customers a month and interviewed them, your marketing process would be a lot better.
No, it's interesting that you talk about the abandoned cart. Like I've yet to have somebody call me to do that. I'd probably buy it right then and there, right? Because you're putting something in your cart, like you just didn't do that by accident. Like something
Mm-hmm.
happened. I could totally see that. That's a really great tip. So what you're talking about, it's amazing. It's complicated. Super smart guy. If somebody has an e-commerce challenge, like how do people get in contact with you? Are you taking on new clients, or like what's that first step to make that intro to you?
Sure. So you can always look me up at Charles Leikauf on Instagram, or just go to ecomprofitgroup.com. Those are probably the best places. Depends upon the time of the year whether we have availability or not. But at the end of the day, if you have a conversation with me or someone on my team, the idea is whether it's a good fit for you now or in the future, we can always build you a game plan to get to your goal. Right. And so if you sit down and you're like, hey, I'm at this size, maybe it's a good idea you work with us. Maybe it's not, but at least I can point you in the right direction. And that's what's most important to us. So ecomprofitgroup.com or just Charles Leikoff on Instagram. Those are the two best places.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, should there be a certain amount of revenue they're doing before they talk to you, like a proven process, or like,
Typically, we work with people who are doing over $1 million a year in revenue, who are doing ads, maybe about 500K a year if you're like fully organic. Those are the two kind of thresholds, because under 30 or $50,000 a month, you don't really have like your messaging fit down, and like that's not where you come to me for. Can I be helpful? Sure, but like go get an agency, go get a fractional CMO, like go sit down with someone like that instead of us first.
yeah, and e-commerce is a completely different world where it sounds like, I mean, do you have partner vendors that you work with who can deploy all these ad strategies on the marketing side?
Yeah, I mean, I've got everything from 3PLs to lines of credit to ad agencies to whatever you need, to where we can like point you in a better direction. If it's if it's helpful for you, even if we're not the best solution, like happy to point you where you need to go.
Well, it sounds like you're a great solution at any stage because you can just point them to partners, and when they're ready for you, hopefully that's the goal, right? They come back and hire you, and you're off to the races. So, Charles, thanks so much for coming on. Wealth of knowledge. Really appreciate all the shares today. Definitely provide a lot of value.
Hey man, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Intel. Thank you for joining us. For show notes or other episodes, please visit us at entrepreneurintel.com. Until next time.